What if history is not as complete as we think? Across the world, scientists have uncovered objects that seem to appear in the wrong place, at the wrong time. Artifacts that look too advanced, structures that seem too precise, and discoveries that challenge not just what we know, but how we know it. Some of these findings have logical explanations, others remain debated, but a few still don't fully fit into the timeline of human history. And the most unsettling part? These are not legends. They are real discoveries, studied, documented, and still not fully understood. For most of our lives, we're taught to trust the timeline. Ancient humans lived simple lives. They built with stone, shaped metal slowly, and understood only what their tools allowed them to understand. Progress, we're told, is linear, primitive to advanced, past to present. But every so often, something is found that doesn't follow that pattern, something that feels out of place. And when experts examine these discoveries, they don't immediately reject them. In fact, many of them are preserved, studied, and displayed in museums around the world. Which raises a deeper question. If these objects are real, why don't they fit? Because the problem isn't that these discoveries exist. The problem is that they shouldn't, and yet they do. Across different continents, in completely unrelated locations, researchers have uncovered artifacts that seem disconnected from the era they belong to. Some are hidden deep beneath the ocean floor. Others are locked inside ancient stone. A few are so small they can only be seen under a microscope. But they all share one thing in common. They challenge the limits of what we believe ancient civilizations were capable of. Now, to be clear, most scientists approach these findings with caution. There are explanations, geological processes, natural formations, misinterpretations, even hoaxes. And in many cases, those explanations make sense, but not always completely, because every now and then there's a detail that doesn't quite fit, a measurement that's too precise, a structure that's too symmetrical, a material that seems too advanced. And that's where the certainty begins to fade, because if even one of these discoveries turns out to be something more than we expect, then the implications are difficult to ignore. It would mean that somewhere in the distant past, knowledge existed that we don't fully understand today, or that history as we know it is missing pieces, important ones. And this is where things start to get uncomfortable, because the more closely these discoveries are examined, the more they seem to blur the line between accepted history and unanswered mystery. Which brings us to one of the most famous objects ever discovered, an object pulled from the depths of the sea that looked nothing like anything from its time. At first glance, it appeared to be nothing more than a corroded lump of metal, something easily overlooked. But when researchers took a closer look, everything changed. Because hidden inside that ancient object was a level of complexity no one expected to find. And this is where the real story begins. It was pulled from the depths of the sea, broken, corroded, and almost forgotten. But what researchers discovered inside would challenge everything we thought we knew about ancient technology. The Antikythera Mechanism. At first glance, it looked like nothing more than a lump of bronze fragments. It was recovered in 1901 from a shipwreck near the Greek island of Antikythera. For decades, it sat quietly in a museum, misunderstood, almost ignored, until someone looked closer. Inside the corroded metal were gears, dozens of them, intricately arranged, interlocking with a precision that seemed impossible for its time. This is where things don't add up. The mechanism dates back over 2,000 years, and yet it can track celestial movements, predict eclipses, and model the cycles of the planets. According to researchers, it's often described as the world's first analog computer. But here's the problem. Nothing else like it exists from that period. No gradual development, no simpler prototypes, no clear technological path leading to it. It appears fully formed. Official explanations suggest that ancient Greek engineers were simply far more advanced than we once believed, that this device represents a lost tradition of mechanical craftsmanship. But some believe something else entirely, that the knowledge used to create it didn't originate in that time at all, but was inherited, preserved, or even rediscovered. Because if such precision existed once, why did it disappear for over 1,000 years? And if it wasn't unique, then where are the others? But as strange as that mechanism is, it's not the only object that seems out of place in history. Because sometimes the mystery isn't about complexity, it's about electricity. In the 1930s, near Baghdad, archaeologists uncovered a small clay jar, simple, unremarkable, easy to overlook. But inside, things got interesting. A copper cylinder, an iron rod, and traces of an acidic substance. This artifact is now known as the Baghdad Battery. Some researchers suggest that when filled with liquid, it could produce a small electrical charge. This is where it gets strange. The artifact is believed to be over 2,000 years old. Electricity, as we understand it, wasn't formally studied until much later. So why would such a device exist in ancient Mesopotamia? According to conventional explanations, it may have been used for electroplating, a process of coating metals with a thin layer of another metal using electric current. But there's a problem. There is very limited evidence that ancient cultures actually used electricity in this way on a practical scale. No wires, no systems, no infrastructure. Just this isolated object. Some believe it may not have been a battery at all, that it could have served a different purpose entirely, perhaps ritualistic, symbolic, or even misunderstood. But others suggest something more unsettling, that ancient civilizations may have experimented with forms of energy we barely recognize, and that what we found is only a fragment of a larger, lost understanding. Because if this really was a battery, then what was it powering, and where are the rest of the components? But perhaps the most controversial discovery doesn't involve gears or electricity. It involves something much simpler: a hammer. At first, that sounds almost absurd, ordinary, unremarkable. But this is no ordinary tool. The London hammer. Discovered in Texas in the 1930s, it was reportedly found partially embedded in a rock formation. And not just any rock. Geological estimates suggest that the surrounding stone could be millions of years old. This is where things become deeply uncomfortable. Because if the rock truly formed around the hammer, that would place a man-made object in a time long before humans were supposed to exist. Now, scientists approach this claim with caution. The official explanation is far more grounded. It's possible that the hammer is much younger and that mineral deposits formed around it relatively quickly.
But this is where things get even stranger. Because the next discovery doesn't just challenge our understanding of history, it challenges our understanding of engineering itself. Deep within ancient Egypt, archaeologists uncovered a stone object unlike anything else from its time, the Sabu Disc. At first glance, it looks almost delicate, a carved stone artifact with 3 thin, curved lobes extending from a central hub. It dates back over 5,000 years to the first dynasty of Egypt. But here's the problem. It doesn't look like anything else from that era. Ancient Egyptian tools and objects were typically functional, symbolic, or decorative. But this looks mechanical, almost like a component. This is where things don't add up. The disc is made of schist, a brittle stone that easily breaks under pressure, and yet it was carved into an incredibly precise, symmetrical form with thin, curved edges that should have snapped during production. According to mainstream archaeology, it may have been a ceremonial object, or perhaps a decorative vessel, but many engineers have looked at its design and noticed something unusual. Its shape resembles a modern impeller, a rotating component used in pumps or turbines. Now, that doesn't mean it actually functioned as one, but here's what makes researchers uncomfortable. If you recreate the shape and spin it in water, it behaves like a fluid-moving device, efficiently. Some believe this is just a coincidence, that humans often create similar shapes when solving different problems, but others suggest something more provocative, that the Sabu Disc may be a stylized copy or even a misunderstood remnant of a technological concept far ahead of its time. Because if it wasn't just symbolic, then what was its real purpose, and who understood how to design something like this? But just when you think things can't get more unusual, they do. Because sometimes the mystery isn't about what humans built, but what nature itself has done. In 1972, scientists studying uranium deposits in Gabon, Africa, made a discovery that left them stunned: the Oklo Natural Nuclear Reactor. At first, it didn't make sense. Samples of uranium from the site showed signs that part of the material had already undergone nuclear fission. In simple terms, the fuel had already been used, but no one had mined it, no one had processed it. So how could that be possible? This is where it gets truly fascinating. Further investigation revealed that around 2 billion years ago, a natural nuclear reaction had taken place at this site, sustained, stable, and incredibly controlled. According to scientists, specific conditions aligned perfectly: the concentration of uranium, the presence of groundwater acting as a moderator, and geological stability allowed the reaction to occur. But here's what makes this discovery so unsettling. The reaction didn't spiral out of control. It behaved in cycles, turning on and off, almost like a regulated system. And this is what makes researchers pause. Because controlling a nuclear reaction is one of the most complex challenges in modern science. Yet here, nature appeared to have done it on its own. Some see this as a rare but purely natural phenomenon, a remarkable coincidence of physics and geology. But others ask a different question. If nature can create something that resembles advanced human technology, then how often does it happen? And how many other impossible systems have we simply not recognized yet? But the next discovery takes us in a different direction, into a place where the line between natural formation and artificial design becomes almost impossible to define. Off the coast of Japan, beneath the ocean's surface, lies a massive underwater structure, the Yonaguni Monument. Discovered in the 1980s by a diver, it rises from the seabed like a submerged city. Flat terraces, sharp angles, step-like formations that look almost carved. This is where things get complicated. Some geologists argue that these formations are entirely natural, that over time, tectonic activity and erosion created these geometric shapes, and in many cases, nature can produce surprisingly regular patterns. But here's where it gets strange. Certain sections appear too precise. Right angles, symmetrical layouts, features that resemble staircases and platforms. According to some researchers, these could be the remains of a man-made structure, possibly dating back thousands of years to a time when sea levels were much lower. But there is no definitive proof, no tools, no inscriptions, no artifacts confirming human construction. And yet, the resemblance is hard to ignore, because this is what makes it so unsettling. We may be looking at something natural that looks artificial, or something artificial that has been mistaken for natural. And this is where the real mystery begins, because if even one of these interpretations is wrong, then we are misreading history itself, and what comes next may push that uncertainty even further. And this is where the mystery reaches its peak. Because the final discoveries don't just raise questions about technology or geology, they challenge something far more fundamental: our understanding of human presence itself. Hidden deep within layers of rock, ice, and time, scientists have uncovered objects so small, so precise, that they almost shouldn't exist at all. The nanospirals of the Ural Mountains. Discovered in the 1990s during geological surveys in remote regions of Russia, these microscopic objects were found buried deep within ancient sediment layers. At first, they seemed insignificant, tiny metallic fragments barely visible to the naked eye. But when examined under powerful microscopes, everything changed. These were not random shapes. They were perfectly formed spirals. Some measured just a few millimeters. Others were thousands of times smaller. Their size reached into the microscopic, even nanoscopic scale. And this is where things don't add up. The spirals were made from metals like copper, tungsten, and molybdenum, materials that require extremely high temperatures and controlled environments to shape, especially at such small scales. According to researchers, producing structures like these today would require advanced laboratories, precision instruments, and modern technology. But these objects were found in layers of Earth estimated to be tens of thousands of years old. This is what makes scientists uncomfortable, because there are only a few possible explanations: contamination from modern industrial activity, a misinterpretation of natural formations, or something far more difficult to accept. Some believe they could be the result of unknown natural processes, rare but not impossible. Others suggest they may be remnants of human-made materials that somehow migrated into older layers. But there are also more speculative ideas that these spirals could be fragments of advanced microtechnology, parts of systems we don't yet understand. Not proof, not confirmed, but enough to raise questions that remain unanswered. Because if even a fraction of this is true, then our timeline isn't just incomplete, it's fractured. But just when it seems like we've reached the edge of explanation, one final mystery remains, and this one may be the most unsettling of all. High in the mountains between China and Tibet, researchers have reported the discovery of strange stone discs known as the Dropa stones, circular with a hole in the center and fine spiral grooves etched across their surface. At first, they appear primitive, but this is where the story takes a strange turn. Some researchers have claimed that these grooves may represent a form of inscription, possibly an unknown writing system. Others suggest they could be purely decorative or even natural erosion patterns. But here's what makes this discovery different: the interpretation. There are controversial claims, not widely accepted, that these discs contain encoded information, that they may tell a story, a record of events, or even visitors. Now, it's important to be clear, there is no scientific consensus supporting these more extraordinary interpretations. Many experts question the authenticity of the artifacts themselves or the accuracy of the claims surrounding them. And yet, the idea persists, because this is what makes researchers pause, not the certainty, but the possibility. Because throughout history, we have repeatedly discovered things that once seemed impossible until they were understood. And this leaves us with a question, not about one object, not about one theory, but about everything. What if history is not a straight line, but a fragmented puzzle? What if knowledge has been lost, rediscovered, and lost again? And what if some of these discoveries are not anomalies, but echoes? Echoes of ideas, technologies, and civilizations that existed long before our recorded past. We may never have all the answers, and perhaps that's the point. Because the deeper we look into the past, the more we realize how much remains hidden. So the question is no longer just what we have found,
but what we have yet to discover. And if one day we do uncover the full truth, will it confirm what we believe or force us to rewrite everything? The answer may already be buried beneath our feet.